Hello, and today we're gonna start Jane Eyre, chapter 1 to 5. Let's revise. Jane's life at the Reeds wasn't a peaceful and nice one. Illustrate or elaborate or give reasons or discuss the same meaning. Jane lived with Aunt Reed, her cousins, Joan, Eliza, and Georgiana. John treated her badly. He grabbed her by the hair, hit her many times. Aunt Reed also treated her badly like a dog, like an animal. She was humiliated and gambitted hen, and she was kept or locked in the red room as a punishment. Question 2. Jane suffered hallucinations in the red room. يعني ايه hallucinations؟ ابتدى يجي لها هلاويس بقى وتتخيل حاجات والكلام ده. She was afraid to go into the red room because it was cold and dark. Nobody slept there since Uncle Reed's death. She began to see things. Then a light appeared and began to move along the wall and the ceiling of the room. She thought it was Uncle Reed's ghost for sure. So she was scared to stay in this dark, cold room for alone, and she started to think. She thought she is seeing Uncle Reed's ghost. Her fear made her imagine things. تخيل حاجات بقى هناك. Jane found a better chance to escape humiliation. جات لها فرصة بقى إن هي تهرب من الذل ده. And suffering at the Reeds. إيه الفرصة دي بقى؟ Jane suffered a lot from the Reed's family. It's a bad treatment. فهقول she was bullied and hit by John. دي مش الإجابة. الإجابة بقى هي دي. So Dr. Lloyd suggested a better place for Jane by going to a boarding school اللي هي Lowood School. تمام؟ comment أو comment بيقول لك مين اللي قال الكلام ده؟ ازاي اجاوب السؤال ده؟ فاقول these words were said to كذا by كذا when كذا عشان كذا. تمام؟ Nothing belongs to you here. You are less than a servant. أنت أقل من خادمة. John said these words to Jane when after he snatched her book and threw it back at her head. Then he began to hit her as many times before, but this time Jane kicked him and fought back. If Jane wants to behave like an animal, she shall be treated like one. طبعا Aunt Reed said these words to Bessie after she locked Jane in the red room. So Jane started to bang on the door and scream, خرجوني من هنا يا ولاد اللذينة. After that, Aunt Reed opened the door to see why Jane was screaming. Then she locked her again. Jane was terrified. يا حرام. And she fell into Bessie's arms. But Aunt Reed was there to push her back into the room. خالي جوه. She offended Jane and she told her that she was an animal. Let's go to chapter 2. Lowood School was supposed to be a place for rules and discipline. يعني ده كان مكان فيه نظام وقواعد ما ينفعش تتكسر. Elaborate. طبعا واحد يجي يقول لي يعني ايه elaborate يا مستر؟ اقول له مالكش دعوه. ما تشغلش دماغك. اشرح لي بقى. هي معناها explain. A very traditional system of full of routine was followed at Lowood School. كانوا بيستخدموا بقى روتين يعني rules ولازم تمشي عليها والكلام ده. They began the day by marching down to classes. يروحوا الكلاسز الصبح. عارف يعني ايه marching؟ اللي هي المشية العسكرية مش يمشوا عادي لازم يمشوا مشية عسكرية.
شفناها في الفيديو.
The first lesson went by and at last it was time for breakfast. Classes start again at 9 o'clock and all teachers were in one room with their classes. Jane found that was boring. She spent 12 hours at school and nobody spoke to her. إنه شيء ممل جدا. and if you break these rules you will be punished by Mr. Brocklehurst. Jane was capable of having a clue about Lowood and its history by chatting with Helen Burns. يعني كانت قادرة إن هي تاخد معلومات من هيلين. إزاي بقى؟ هيلين قالت لها إيه؟ Helen was friendly right from the beginning. She told Jane the history of Lowood and how Mr. Brocklehurst had started this. Mrs. Brocklehurst, اللي هي مامة Mr. Brocklehurst, started the school and then she left the school to her son who lived at اوكي Lowood was a charity school يعني كانت زي جمعية خيرية أو مدرسة خيرية للفقراء يعني. That's why kind people give money to keep them and pay teachers. She informed her about the names of the teachers and the best one was Miss Temple. Question 3. Mr. Brocklehurst wasn't a pleasant character. ممكن يجي السؤال بطريقة مختلفة. ما تجيش تحفظ الأسئلة كده زي ما هي. ويجي يعني يجي سؤال مثلا يقول لك إيه؟ Mr. Brocklehurst was cruel, was unkind, was evil. ويجي يقول لك give examples. طبعا انت ايه ده ما كانش في الشيت، ده سؤال مختلف. هو نفس السؤال، هو بيغير حاجات بسيطة. One day Mr. Brocklehurst pointed at one of the girls who had curly hair and he said she must have a plain one يعني cut her hair. Then he turned to Jane and ordered to stand on this chair in front of the class as a punishment all day. And the teachers punish her. Girls, don't talk to her anymore. Question 4. It was because Miss Temple and Miss Lloyd that Jane's life at Lowood changed. Miss Temple دي كانت طيبة ومستر لويد برضه كان راجل محترم. فبعت جواب لميس تمبل بيقول لها ان البنت دي بريئة برقوقة. Miss Temple, who felt that Jane was innocent, sent a letter to Mr. Lloyd and asked him about Jane's life at Gateshead. A week later, she received a letter from Mr. Lloyd. She proved that Jane Eyre was innocent of everything. يعني جالها لتر ان بيقول ان مس جين اير كانت بريئة. مستر بروكلهurst had accused her of من الحاجات اللي هو كان مستر بروكلهurst بيتهمها بيها. This made a difference in Jane's life at school. وده غير حياتها at school. الكومنت بقى. Girls, don't speak to her. Teachers, watch her and punish her. مين اللي قال ده؟ مستر بتنجانة Brocklehurst. 2. Said this in front of the class. He ordered Jane to stand on a chair all day as a punishment, and he wanted to because she will learn from her mistakes. Chapter 3. The deteriorating situation at Lowood resulted in an investigation which affected life inside Lowood School. السؤال ده بيقول ايه؟ يعني الوضع المتدهور في اللوود ادى الى ان يحصل تحقيق والحياه في اللوود كلها تتغير بعد كده. طبعا. ليه بقى؟ There was an investigation on Lowood because many girls died there. لما ناس كتير ابتدت تموت هناك ابتدوا يعملوا investigation. The investigation is a group of rich and kind people took over the school. ابتدى الناس بقى يبقوا هم المسؤولين عن السكول. ناس rich and kind. They made sure that there was enough food for everybody. يأكلهم أكل كويس. And the nice clothes وهدوم حلوة. And they built a new building for the school which was warmer كان أدفى فالناس ما بقتش تتعب. So the conditions became better. كله بقى تمام. Jane took her first step towards the world outside Lowood. ابتدت تاخد خطوات جريئة بره إن هي تخرج بره لوود. إمتى؟ She started to think outside the outside world. ابتدت تفكر في العالم الخارجي اللي هو outside Lowood. عملت إيه بقى؟ But she didn't want to go back to Gateshead. مش هرجع لهم تاني دول. She decided to advertise to see if she could get a job as a governess. كانت محتاجة تشتغل كمدرسة. With a family, she wrote a letter and posted. A week later, she received a reply from Mrs. Fairfax of the Thornyfield Hall to work as a governess. Bessy's visit يعني زيارة بيسي was out of love يعني بدافع الحب يعني هي جالها عشان حب مش عشان حاجة تاني. أول زيارة ليها. طبعا a strange visit from Bessie to Jane at Lowood School. Bessie had changed a lot. She got married and أول حاجة got married. She had 2 children. Bessie told Jane about the Reed's news. ابتدت تحكي لها الأخبار. John wasted all the family's money on himself, and Mrs. Reed's is well but quieter. بقت أهدى من الأول. Bessie was pleased that Jane Eyre had done well in her life. وبيسي مبسوطة إن جين إير كويسة في حياتها. Okay? Comment. Jane, it is far too cold to stand in your bare feet. الجو ساقع يا حبيبتي على رجلك، ما تقفيش كده. مين اللي قال الكلام ده؟ هيلين. said to Jane. فين؟ ده بيدلك إن هيلين كان بتحب جين قوي. In Mrs. Temple's room. When Jane couldn't stop thinking about her, she had to see her because Helen was sick. She wondered about until she found her, started speaking الكلام ده كله. Even though Helen was very sick, she still thought of others. حتى وهي sick بتفكر في حبيبتها صاحبتها. Jane get into bed with her because it was too cold to stand. She slept with beside her in the same bed. بس دي مش حاسسها مهمة قوي. Sit down by the fire and the maid Leah will make you a sandwich and hot drink. تعالي يا حبيبتي تدفي لحد ما السيرفنت تعمل لك حاجة تشربيها. طبعا ده يدل لك ان مسز فيرفاكس كانت ست محترمة. Mrs. Fairfax, the housekeeper, said to Jane Eyre at Thornfield Hall when Jane started a new step in her life as a governess in the Thornfield Hall. ده المكان اللي ساكنين فيه. Mrs. Fairfax gave Jane a brief idea about the family and she would live with. And she liked Mrs. Fairfax for her kindness. حبتها عشان ايه؟ Because she was so kind. Chapter 4 الفرفور. Jane was faced by a surprise. قابلت مفاجأة at Mrs. Fairfax's room. Fairfax's room. المفاجأة اللي لقيتها. When she entered, she found a large dog sitting and wagged its tail when he saw Jane. It is the same dog. نفس الدوج اللي ايه? That she saw with discovered that this house is Mr. Rochester. اللي هو the strange rider on the horse that she saw while she was going out. Mrs. Fairfax justified to Jane Mr. Rochester's unfriendly attitude. يعني ايه الكلام ده؟ ازاي مسز فيرفاكس بررت ان مستر روتشستر هو ليه اسلوبه مش فريندلي؟ فايه الاسباب اللي هي اديتها لها؟ اول حاجه جين was confused about Mr. Rochester a changeable character. ليه شخصيته عامله كده؟ and she asked Mrs. Fairfax. Mrs. Fairfax said that يا ستي ده هو ايوه هي دي الاجابه بقى. He had hard life. His brother is dead. His family didn't treat him well, and he hardly came home. He spent most of his time wandering all over the world. He doesn't like to stay in Thornfield because he thinks it is boring. Come here and let me lean on you. تعال اسند عليك يا حبيبتي. Who said this? Mr. Rochester, اللي هو the strange rider, said this to Jane after he refused their offer of helping her at the beginning. Then he tried to walk on his leg, but his leg was hurting him. So keeping his arrogant tone, he asked Jane help to get on his horse. Jane was so decent, كانت مؤدبة جدا, and polite. She helped him and she was so kind. Chapter 5, and this is the last chapter we'll take today. لا خلينا chapter 5 نحطه مع الجزء التاني.